So next we're gonna get into scanning. We're gonna talk a bit about scanning. We have lots of articles. I got a few articles in the course here that's worth reading through, and how important scanning is. And it is actually a technique, and it does have a lot of cognitive load. So when we're thinking about scanning, we have different positions. Like here in the pool, we have to be able to see the whole pool when we're scanning. If we are in a facility that has multiple pools and different layouts, we have to have probably more than one guard on deck to actually make good coverage on scanning. Like we're talking here. So if we have three different pools, we don't have a lot of patrons. You know what? One lifeguard can cover one area. This pool's pretty big with like a hot tub, and most hot tubs don't need to be actually actively supervised. You just got to be able to check on them. So having a lifeguard up in this position, they would cover that area. And this pool, this lifeguard probably be better positioned in this area closer, and then aiming that way so she can cover the her zone and kind of do a bit of an overlap. So we got to make sure we got a lot of overlap on our zones. The other thing about scanning is it's hard to scan when you take all the toys out, because everybody wants to come to the pool and play with toys. Because if we had no toys, there'd be no reason to come to the pool. And the best of thing of all is being able to float on. I mean, I've seen people come to the pool, jump on a mat, and they never even swam the rest of the day. I mean, they were there for 2 hours floating. Mats, tubes, anything that floats on top of the surface are lots of fun for our patrons, but as lifeguarding, you got to be aware of these mats and these floating toys, because this is where your passive, when we talk about our passive drowning victim, some kid jumps, hits his head, ends up underneath the mat. And of course, children do float. If he ends up floating up underneath that mat, it's really hard for us to see. So it's very important as lifeguards to go over and move these mats, take them out of the water. I would prefer not to keep my floating toys in my pool if I was running a pool or lifeguarding. But for sure, definitely go over and move them around, especially if they get into a corner where you can't see underneath them very well. Again, we're talking about the floaty um, donut toy. These tubes are all over. They're usually more in the water parks or anything the kids can float on. They get on top of them. Even adults do it. You'll see these adults, they all get together and they're floating around. And the one adult really can't swim that very well, but he doesn't want to admit to his friends that he can't swim. So he's floating around in this tube. They end up in the deep water. If you get somebody that looks like they shouldn't be there, even an adult, we need to check them, right? Check their swimming ability. And what you don't want to do is you just don't want to yell at that person that's in the middle of the pool and say, "Hey, can you swim?" And they're like, "Sure." And they bail off the floaty toy and it turns out they can't swim. So always get them to come to the edge, get them out on deck, and get them someplace where they can stand if you're going to test their swimming ability. And again, scanning, we're talking about scanning, recognizing people in trouble. If we look at this young patron here, if you actually, and I've seen this kid lots, the kid that actually almost swims horizontal, but he still has forward motion. But what we can do too is we can also look at their facial recognition. We know if you look at this kid, he's smiling, they're struggling a little, maybe a little to get their head out of the water, but we all know that kid, when you watch him, and he makes it always to the edge. So you also take note of the swimming ability of the people in your zone. So if you got that kid that looks like this and swimming all the time, and I'm telling you, man, I've seen that kid. He goes off the diving board, swims to the edge, goes off the diving board, and he'll be there for 3 hours doing that, and that's what they look like. Just take note of that kid, and if there's a change in that, and eventually that kid should fatigue out, you need to maybe ask them just to take a break. Tell them to sit on the edge for a bit before they go back out again. So basically, scanning is when we're busy looking for stuff and we recognize a problem, we should, go over and intervene a little bit before it becomes a larger problem. The other thing too, when we're scanning, this is a great thing. I can't tell what this is. This could be the bottom of the drain of the pool. Some pools, depending on where I'm standing. If I see any type of shadow that's under the water, and then you can check the water here. So if you have a lot of disturbance on top of the water, you can't see clearly to the bottom. So when you're doing your kind of lap around your pool, making your zone safe, checking corners, we need to make sure that we're also not just scanning the surface of the water, we're scanning the bottom of the water, but we also have to go over to areas where if we can't tell, like that might just be a shadow being casted in from like lights coming in, and it just the way the guard chart might be, it's hard to tell. I would bet that's not a shadow. It could be like I said, the drain of on the pool or something like that. But you need to go over and actually check and confirm that is not somebody there.